Hi, in this devlog I'll be completely redesigning my game's main character from this to this. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I can't really draw a good main character since, well, this is my third character texture already, so instead, I'm gonna get someone else to do it. After looking through a bunch of forums, I found an artist that I think is very suitable for my game. So I asked them to draft out a player texture, and here's what that looks like. Well, I would have preferred if the texture would seamlessly change from the old one to the new one, but something seems to have gone wrong. So it seems that after switching out the textures, Unity doesn't regenerate the sprite geometry since I've already turned it into a skinned renderer. Also, the original texture was using sprite bones to animate, but the new texture is split into lots of smaller pieces. What's the difference, you ask? Well, bone-based sprite animation is more confusing, but it allows objects to dynamically deform to match the bone objects. This makes it pretty easy to create organic objects, but it does have a disadvantage, which is that there are usually some visual errors that happen, such as sprites not deforming in a nice way, or the bones affecting parts you don't want it to affect. It also hurts performance, but that's what usually happens when you use these types of tools. However, the player texture is split into a bunch of smaller textures, which means that instead of creating and animating the bones, I instead animated the transforms of the sprites. This method is much more accurate as it allows me to define exactly how I want the animations to look, since it's not generated through a bone script and is much less resource intensive, at the cost of not being able to create organic and fluid-like animations. To begin animating the character, first I have to define the anchor points, which tells the game engine how to affect the sprite when it's rotated. By default, Unity pivots the sprite by its middle point, so it rotates how you would expect an object to normally rotate. But for these joints, I don't want the anchor to be in the middle, since that's not really how body parts work. Changing the anchor point on Unity is quite straightforward. You just open the sprite editor, move this blue point to where you want the pivot to be, and then it magically works. Using these anchor points, here's the walk animation. Here's the think animation. Here's the hurt animation. Here's the attack animation. Here's the spell animation. And here's the win animation. All these animations are cool, but the character still needs something to make it feel more alive, so I added some blinking animations. How it works is that every few frames, a random number generator is used to define whether or not the character should blink. If the random number generator says yes, then it runs a small coroutine that switches out the eye sprites very quickly, making it look like the player character blinked. That's it. It was really simple to improve this, and it actually makes the character look alive. I'm not done though, since my artist went above and beyond and gave me a bunch of emotions for the mouth. I decided to incorporate them as well. First, I imported them into Unity as a separate Photoshop file, and then created an emotion manager that changes the mouth's emotions when the stuff happens in-game. So when nothing's happening, the player's at the default happy emotion. But when the player gets hurt, the mouth switches to this sprite, and when the player's health is really low, it switches to this sprite. I then also added some shadows to my game, which helps sell the impression that the characters actually belong in the game world and aren't a bunch of images overlaid on a background. This shadow generator script has a slot for the size of the shadow as well as the offset. But wait, some of the animations in the game are jumps, so how will the script know? Well, the script stores the initial Y level of the renderer, and if it changes, it adapts the shadow position to make sure that the shadow stays in nearly the same position. But when I actually move the whole character up, it won't detect as a jump. There's one final thing I want to take care of in this video, and that's the sprite sorting order. Right now, if there are two characters right next to each other, their textures will kinda clip in and out of existence since their sorting order is the same. I want to change this, so that instead of keeping the sprite order the same, enemies that are lower will have a higher sorting order, which makes the game have a 3D feel. This was achieved by another really simple script that just uses the character's Y position to change their sorting order. And here's what everything combined looks like.